What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 63 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Thursday, March 27th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malamud. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Happy opening day, everyone. Let's start things off in the world of baseball as both New York teams are in action today. A 3 o'clock start. Let's start off with the New York Yankees. 3 o'clock, like I said, against the Milwaukee Brewers. It's going to be Carlos Rodon getting the nod for the Yankees and Freddie Peralta getting the nod on opening day for the Milwaukee Brewers. Obviously, it's very early in the season, opening day, and still 162 games to go. But I think there's a lot of doubters right now on this New York Yankees team. Yes, plenty of injuries in that rotation. You got Garrett Cole out for the season due to Tommy John. You also got Luis Gil out till probably the middle of the summer when it comes to a right lat strain for him. And then you got Clark Schmidt, no timetable just yet on him, but obviously dealing with some back problems. And obviously the Yankees have a lot of losses in that pitching staff, and that's going to be a big deal for the Yankees. But I still think they have a stacked bullpen. Still the additions of Devin Williams, and they also have Luke Weaver still there. But then you look at this Yankees lineup, and I still think there's a lot of doubters there. And of course, Giancarlo Stanton is not going to be in this lineup for a little bit and still dealing with those tennis elbows, and really no timetable on him either on when he'll be back this season. But you look at Ben Rice filling the void now for Giancarlo Stanton at DH. He'll bat 8th in the lineup today. And then you got a void still at third base. And, of course, DJ LeMahieu was projected to be the opening day starter. He's dealing with injury as well as Cabrera is the third baseman today, batting 9th. So when you look at this Yankees lineup, it's still dangerous. Aaron Judge at 2 with Cody Bellinger at 3 and Paul Goldschmidt at 4. You're also looking at Jazz Chisholm right behind Paul Goldschmidt, more of a contact hitter that could also have a bit of pop to him. And I think Jazz Chisholm at number 6 in the lineup, followed by Jason Dominguez. That's a really scary lineup for the New York Yankees. Excuse me, Jazz Chisholm at 5, and then you got Jason Dominguez at 6. Those two paired together at 5 and 6 behind guys like Bellinger and Goldschmidt. I still think that's a scary lineup for the New York Yankees this season. And even with the injury to Giancarlo Stanton, they really do have a lot of power here, and not an easy lineup to navigate with the left-handed and right-handed batters in the lineup. Now, obviously, the Yankees in recent history have had a lot of right-handed batters in their lineup, and it hasn't been too difficult to work around it. You're going left, right now with Wells, Judge, Bellinger, and Goldschmidt, and then you're going a couple of lefties as well in Chisholm, as well as Jason Dominguez. So we'll see what happens for the Yankees today. Very early, but obviously I think a point to prove early in this season for the Yankees, a team that made it all the way to the World Series last year and won the American League pennant. They also are losing one of their star players in Juan Soto as he went to the other side of town, of course, to the New York Mets. And he'll make his Mets debut today at 4:10 down in Houston as the Mets take on the Astros. Like I said, a 4:10 start. It's going to be Clay Holmes, the former Yankee, getting the start for the New York Mets. Obviously, they're dealing with injuries as well to their starting rotation without a couple of guys in Sean Manaea as well as Frankie Montas, both on the IL for now for the New York Mets. And I think when you look at Clay Holmes, a guy who hasn't started a game since late September of 2018, gets the opening day start. And obviously, that's a big decision from Carlos Mendoza. But obviously, I think he's earned it. And then when you look at what Carlos Mendoza has said about Clay Holmes during this spring, he has definitely earned it. I mean, the stats don't lie. And Clay Holmes has been rock solid for the Mets. You can't really take too much from spring training. Obviously, facing a much different lineup today for the Houston Astros. But when you look at Clay Holmes and his stuff, can it go long enough? Can it go 5 innings, 6 innings? That's the question in my mind for Clay Holmes this season. I think he'll probably have a couple bumps in the road early in the season, still getting used to being a starting pitcher, going 5, 6 innings with the same pitches over and over again, but he did add another pitch to his arsenal, so we'll see what happens. But he gets the start against Framber Valdez on the other side for the Houston Astros, the left-handed pitcher who's been really strong for Houston in his Astros career and looking to get a strong start here on opening day. So we'll see what happens in that one. 4-10 start for the New York Mets to open their season. A lot of expectations about this lineup, and we'll see what happens with the trio of Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. It should be very interesting to see what happens with those three guys. And this season for the New York Mets, it's going to be a big one. A lot of people to prove wrong, and obviously that's due to the Los Angeles Dodgers being in the National League. But we're getting way too ahead of ourselves. Just opening day in the MLB. Just enjoy it for now as the Mets and Yankees both in action as opening day 2025 begins later today. Let's shift things to football as the New York Giants made some massive news earlier this week. They have signed quarterback Russell Wilson to a 1-year, $10.5 million guaranteed deal worth up to $21 million. Like I said, a 1-year deal here for a Super Bowl champion and a 10-time Pro Bowler to send him to MetLife Stadium for the season. Wilson projected to be the starter for the Giants this season. Obviously, New York had signed Jameis Winston last week on a backup quarterback contract, so to speak. Now you look at the NFL draft upcoming just a month away, and I think this changes things for the Giants just a little bit. A lot of people still believe that the Giants will draft a quarterback at number 3. Maybe that's Shedeur Sanders. Jackson Dart is jumping up draft boards, but even so, I do believe that Russell Wilson this year gives the Giants the best chance to win right now over a guy like Shedeur Sanders or even Jackson Dart if they go for him. I do believe Russell Wilson gives them the best opportunity and gives Joe Shane and Brian Daboll the best opportunity to win some games this year. Obviously, the Giants are going through a rough schedule this season. I don't expect them to win more than 6 games or so, probably in the 5 or 6 games range. And I think that's the story right now for Daboll and Shane. Almost the last resort here for the Giants to try and prove that they still deserve to have the job heading into the couple of seasons after that. But I just don't think that's going to be the case. Russell Wilson right now is probably the best decision for the New York Giants. And like I said, the veteran presence that they have there, I do still believe that they could draft a quarterback, whether it's in the 2nd or 3rd rounds, or maybe even later in the draft, and try and develop that quarterback under those two veterans in Russell Wilson as well as Jameis Winston. Even Russell Wilson talked about that. If they do draft a quarterback, the Giants, it would be no problem trying to help them develop and learn under center. I think that's a big thing for the Giants this year, but I don't believe it's going to come in the 1st round. I do believe that Daboll and Shane will look for another key piece to help, whether it's on defense or on offense. One of those key position players, whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a cornerback wide receiver like Travis Hunter, or it's just some more help in the trenches on the line. That's going to be the difference for the Giants heading into the draft. I don't believe that quarterback is really on their radar in that 1st round anymore at number 3 overall. Of course, with Cam Ward projected to go number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. So we'll see what happens there, but this is a big-time deal in my mind for the New York Giants because it proves that Joe Shane as well as Brian Daboll are really going for it here and trying to save their jobs for the couple of seasons later down the road. So we'll see what happens, but the Giants get Russell Wilson to be their projected starting quarterback for the 2025 season. Let's shift things to the NBA now, and in the world of basketball, the New York Knicks are in action tomorrow night. Let's recap the last couple of days for the Knicks, though, as they had a back-to-back. They won the first game of the back-to-back on Tuesday night, a 128-113 victory over the Dallas Mavericks, and that one was a big deal with Josh Hart as well as Karl Anthony Towns both having triple-doubles. OG Anunoby had 35 points in that one. The offense was really feeling good, and that really was not the case the night after as they went into the second night of a back-to-back and they took on the Los Angeles Clippers at Madison Square Garden. And the Clippers were on the end of victory here with a 126-113 win over the New York Knicks. So the Knicks now move to 45-27 on the season. They just could not figure things out offensively last night. Really the opposite of what they were able to do the night before in three-point range. They did have 13 threes in this one, and they also shot 50% from the field. But when it comes to offense, the turnovers built up just a little bit, and they also really just could not keep up down the stretch. And the Clippers in that third quarter outscored the Knicks 40-29 after the halftime break. So that was the difference in the end after the Knicks had a very strong first half. And this one was really close at halftime, but the Clippers, give credit to them, third quarter team, and they pulled away. And they ultimately come out with a 126-113 victory. Let's look at tomorrow night's game, an 8 o'clock start on the road in Milwaukee, as the 45-27 New York Knicks, the 40-32 Milwaukee Bucks. Knicks a couple of games away from clinching a playoff spot, and they're hoping to continue to get things going with some playoffs looks as well as playoff seeding, as they're looking to close down that 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Still without Jalen Brunson, expected to maybe return in the next week or so, but obviously I've talked about it on previous episodes. They're not going to risk Jalen Brunson, whether it's the last 5 games or so in the regular season. It's just not going to happen, especially if they're continuing to win games. They will save him for the playoffs, and that would probably be the right move in my mind for the Knicks and Jalen Brunson. But they also dealt with a couple of more injury blows. Deuce McBride is a game-time decision, still dealing with a groin problem. And then Cam Payne ends up getting a sprained ankle yesterday, and he's going to be a game-time decision, probably going to be held out for this one, I would believe. But give credit to a guy like Tyler Kolek, who has come off the bench and just been an assist machine in the last couple of days. And he's really, really played well in the absence of Jalen Brunson as a guy coming off the bench to try and help that load at the point guard position. He's done a great job, and I think the Knicks will go to him a lot more even when Brunson is back from injury. So we'll see what happens, but tune in tomorrow night as an 8 o'clock start as the Knicks take on the Milwaukee Bucks up in Milwaukee. Let's finish things up today with a college basketball update, and we got some great games tonight and tomorrow night as the Sweet 16 is here. The regionals are here, and we got some great games. Let's look at the first couple of today's games. And BYU, the 6th seed out of the East region, take on the 2-seeded Alabama Crimson Tide in the East region. Bama is 5.5-point favorites in this one. This one should be a shootout from the beginning. 2 very high-scoring teams, and I do think BYU could have a shot here to really keep up with Bama, and Bama's had a couple close ones here. Of course, they really pulled away from St. Mary's in the end, but even a team like Robert Morris, they were scoring the ball, and they kept it a little bit close towards the end against the Crimson Tide, the 15 seed in the East region. But when you look at BYU, they continue to rack up points and more points and more points on offense. A very NBA style offense that this BYU team has this year. And then you look on the other side with the Crimson Tide. Nate Oates runs an NBA style offense as well. So I'm expecting a ton of points in this one. We might be near the hundreds, I would say, for both of these teams, and that one should be great down in Newark. When you look at the rest of the games, number 4 Maryland taking on number 1 Florida. This one is in the West region, all the way out in San Francisco at the Chase Center. That one is a 7:39 start, and Florida taking on Maryland. I do believe that Florida gets by Maryland here, and their big test will come in the next round, whether they take on Arkansas or Texas Tech, 2 very tough teams. I think that's probably the tougher test than this Maryland team. I know that they have a lot of talent and a lot of young guys and a lot of guys who can score in their starting lineup, but I do think Florida handles it rather than now they would end up going up against a very athletic team in Arkansas or a very defensive team in Texas Tech. We'll see what happens there. Those games should be really fun in the next couple of days. Those games will be Saturday, and the winners will play then on today's slate. When you look at the rest of the games, though, I mentioned that Arkansas Tech game. That's going to be the late one, but first, we do have a rematch of a rivalry here. When you look at Caleb Love, the star player of the Arkansas Wildcat, as the Arizona Wildcats, taking on the number 1 seed Duke Blue Devils. This one is at 9:39 tonight, approximately, with Duke coming in as 9.5-point favorites. They think they roll against Arizona. I do think Caleb Love is going to have something to say about that. He'll keep it close for a while. Of course, the former UNC Tar Heel. I do think Caleb Love will really help Arizona keep this one close, but I do think Duke probably pulls away in the end, maybe covers that 9.5-point spread that Vegas has set for tonight. That one should be great, and make sure you tune into that one later tonight, 9:39 start approximately. When you look at the final game, though, I mentioned Arkansas against Tech. This one should be a great game out of the West region, and two teams that are very physical, very defensive. They can be with a lot of bigs and a lot going on down low in the paint. I do think this one's going to be a battle of the Titans here, and I do think Texas Tech will ultimately come out on top here. They are, just in my mind, the more physical team, and they'll be able to put up points on offense over a team like Arkansas that could deal with a bit of shooting struggles for just a little bit caused by Tech's defensive style. So we'll see what happens in this one, but it should be a great game. 10 o'clock tonight, 10:09 approximately on the West Coast. Make sure you tune into all of Thursday's games, but then you got a great slate on Friday as well. As we started off, 7:09, it's going to be Michigan State taking on Ole Miss. This one down in the South region in Atlanta. And I do think Michigan State, as they are 3.5-point favorites, will come out on top here and advance to the Elite Eight, where they would probably take on the Auburn Tigers. They're expected to, coming out of the South region and the number 1 seed in the South. When you look at that game, they take on Michigan, 7 o'clock or a 9:39 start, taking on the Michigan Wolverines. The 7:09 start for Michigan State, the 9:39 start for Auburn against Michigan. That's going to be a great game as well. Trey Donaldson, the revenge matchup for the Michigan Wolverines. Of course, the point guard who started his career as an Auburn Tiger. I do think Auburn handles this game, though. The physicality down low against the bigs in Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. I do think Auburn comes out on top with a victory here in the South region. Should be interesting, though, those two games out of the South. Then you look at the Midwest region, where we have a great rematch, the third time this season, part 3 of number 2 Tennessee taking on number 3 Kentucky in the Midwest. That one a 7:39 start. Kentucky has grabbed 2 wins against Tennessee this season. Could the third time be the best one for Tennessee, and they finally come out with a win against Kentucky? We'll see what happens there. But then the late game as well, a bit of a road game here for the number 1 seeded Houston Cougars in the Midwest. They take on the 4-seeded Purdue Boilermakers. However, this one in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium, and that's a bit of a road game for the Houston Cougars, taking on a team that is from Indiana. Of course, the Purdue Boilermakers from West Lafayette down the road from Indianapolis. So it should be interesting, but I still think Houston comes out with a victory here. The experience as well as the guard play for Houston so far this season, I don't think Purdue is going to be able to stop them, especially with some of the injuries that Purdue has had down low this season. So we'll see what happens, but should be a great slate the next couple of days of Sweet 16 ball. And then obviously look forward to the Elite Eight this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Make sure you tune into all of these games as March Madness rolls on as we're heading into the month of April. But that'll do it for episode 63 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malum, and thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Friday.